All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Phoenixville Public Library. Those of you with us in our community room and on Zoom. For the first of a three-part series, we are presenting tonight courtesy of Creative Capital Wealth Management Group. It's the Wealth Confidence series, and tonight's topic is building your wealth blueprint. We are pleased to have with us someone who actually has a kind of personal connection to the library. His grandmother was a former children's librarian here, which is pretty awesome. We welcome Liam McIntyre.
Excellent, and thank you all for joining me in person and on Zoom. Once more, my name is Liam McIntyre. I'm currently a financial advisor and wealth strategist with Creative Capital Wealth Management Group. I've been with the group there for about 2 years now. Prior to being with Creative Capital, I spent a couple of years at Vanguard as well, which is odd. I've had an entire career in finance so far, and finance was not my original plan. It was not my degree. I did not go to school for it. I graduated in 2020, which was a very odd year to be graduating in, and I found myself working at a grocery store because that was one of the only places that were open. I applied to Vanguard thinking it was a stretch, thinking I had no shot, I'm just going to do this thing. And lo and behold, they hired me, trained me, and now I get to talk to you now about building your wealth blueprint. So, what I want to do is I want to start off with a little activity. I already prepped my people in the room here, but for my people at home, if you have a pen and paper handy, I want you to get it. And then I want you to fall in love with me because we're going to start with a little activity. Imagine that I just handed you $50,000. And if you look closely at the picture, that money is under the table, all right? IRS doesn't know, your friends don't know, your spouse doesn't know, your kids don't know. And I want you to think about it, and I just want you to write down, you just got $50,000, write down all the things that you'd want to do with that money. Just take 2 minutes and write down, again, exhaust the list, anything you got. Think of all the Amazon purchases you could get. Only 2 things?
Yeah.
You got more. All the things you'd want to do.
All the things?
All the things.
I mean, I think I got my main concerns. I got nothing left.
So I would say start with concerns, but then do some, if you weren't concerned, if you
Okay.
were totally free, what would you buy? What was the car you would buy? What's the house, you would put a down payment on? Just so things, don't just think about, okay, this is the only $50,000 I have left, but try to get those stretch goals. What else would you do, if you could? And now once you have your list, again, this should be, anything that you would possibly want to do with this money. I want you to look back over your list and start trying to prioritize. So think about, okay, if I were given this $50,000 of all the things that I want to do, okay, now let's slow down, let's take a look, like what would be the most important thing that I would want to do, and then order it from there. The top thing that I want to do, and then run down the list. So the order of priority or importance you feel this money would do. And so I'm going to start with my unfortunate people in the room. Top thing you would do?
Pay off credit card debt and pay off my car loan.
Okay.
Pay off my medical debt.
Okay. Anybody on Zoom, if you would like to put in the chat the top thing that you would want to do if you were given $50,000?
You should see the chat pop up on there if they type in.
IRA, okay.
Yep.
Retirement savings. Invest, travel, I love it. So if there's more, let me know. Scholarship donation, wow. So we actually do, like at the firm, we usually start off when a new client comes to us, probably one of the first things we ask them is, what is the most important thing about money to you? And it usually comes down to one of three things, and we've already seen some of it. First is security, which is I like the money because it gives me a sense of security. And if I don't feel that security, that's usually where my mind is going to. I need to pay off my debt, I need to do something, I need to do this, because you're feeling anxious about so many things. Second thing that people are looking for is freedom. So something like travel, I saw. Allowing to, not have to be tied down to, my desk or, working 12 hours a day, 5 days a week. I don't have weekends. So thinking about having that money for the freedom, I can go where I want. Not necessarily that I have to gallivant and, go globetrotting, but thinking about, if I want to, whatever I want to do is because I want to do it. So the money gives you that freedom. And then the third thing that most often we see is family. So usually it's I want to take care of my children, I want to retire my mom and dad. So think about the top three things that people usually come back to regardless of their status, regardless of where they're coming from, whether they're a millionaire or have $2 to their name. Usually everybody can come back to one of three things. That's security, family, or freedom is what we're looking at. Now unfortunately for everyone, I am a little light today. I do not have the $50,000 to give you. So we're going to have to work on getting that ourselves. I want to start with, first, I would say module of the course is more on that budget. You may have seen this method before. I would say the 50-30-20 is probably one of the most well-cited and common budgeting methods. And really what it comes down to is this. You're looking at your income, you're looking at what you're taking home, and once that money comes in, you're looking at how am I going to break down where I allocate those funds. So 50% is going to be to your base needs. So think about what do we need to survive. We need food in our stomach. We need a roof over our head. So think about rent, mortgage. Got to have a place to live. That's going to be in your needs bucket. Utilities, you might have a roof over your head. If you're freezing to death in this crazy winter we're having, that's going to be no good to you. So you got to be able to keep the heat on. You got to be able to keep the lights on. And then things like groceries, we have to eat. And then finally, I know at least for NerdWallet, they put minimum debt payments on. But think about if I'm taking home money, how I budget, I know at least 50% of that money should be going to my base needs. Now this is where we can get, this is where things can get complicated. Because now we're looking at, I have my needs, and now I have my wants. And then, what's left over is I need my savings. So, 50-30-20, again, I want you to think of this as a guide. This is not something that you have to follow to a T, but this is a starting point, and you can sort of tailor from there. So we have 50% we know has to go to our rent, our food, our base needs. 30% is going to be saved for those wants. That's going to be, my Amazon purchases, that's going to be my Netflix, my HBO Max, that's going to be my gym membership, any entertainment. So thinking about the next 30% is going to be for our wants. And then finally, at least the 20% left should be going to savings or to pay down additional debt. So we're looking at, when we're first looking at a budget, money's coming in, how should I start allocating? 50% to needs, 30% to wants, and then 20% to savings and debt paying back. Now, again, don't think about this as this is the hard set number that I have to live toward. So for example, let's just say you're in a good spot and you're thinking about, hey, I think my savings, I want to just prioritize my savings more. I want to prioritize my debt pay down more. Sometimes people flip it. So they put, the 20%, that's going to go to wants. I'm going to decrease my wants. I'm going to, cut down on my subscription services. I'm going to, stop looking at Amazon so much. I'm going to cut down my wants so I can put that additional 10% in with my savings or debt pay down. The other thing is you could also flip that. Let's just say you're in a high cost of living area, or you have, childcare costs that are rising, healthcare costs are rising, and you're like, my needs, the 50%, that's not covering my needs right now. I need a little more. Some people go, 60, 20, 20. So thinking about, just the initial way to do the budget, three categories we're looking at. We have needs, our wants, and our savings, and we want to tailor from there. I would say the most conservative in terms of, really stressing the budget, trying to allocate at least 10% of that money to savings or debt pay down. Ideally, that's going to be the floor that you want to achieve before we go any lower, then you might not be getting the momentum you want. Have you, both of you, ever heard of the 50, 30, 20?
Yeah.
Do you budget?
I budget, but it's not.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, rent is definitely like 50% of my
Right.
income, so that doesn't quite work.
Yeah.
Right now.
Excellent. So I want to just quickly pause for anyone on Zoom. If you have a question, if you want to quickly type it in, I'll wait for a couple seconds here, because then, unfortunately, next is going to be homework. So. And there will be time at the end that I'm going to save for questions. So if we miss it and something comes to you later, we'll have time at the end for any questions. So, for everyone, next up, what I want you to do this week is look at our last 1, 2, 3 months of spending. I think 1 month is a good start, but depending on lifestyle, for example, my last month, my spending may have been way higher than normal. So if you just want like a really good snapshot of your overall spending, sometimes 1 month isn't always the most accurate. So think about trying to get at least 3 months back. Break out the bank statements, break out the credit card statements, and look at, totaling up in those months, what went to my needs, what went to my wants, and what went to my savings or debt repayment. And think about, after you've added up, after you found all of that, how does that compare to the model that we looked at today? 50, 30, 20. One person just came in to homework. She's worst class ever, my gosh. I'm going to hand you this. We'll do some more later.
Okay, thank you.
And then from there, I work with a few clients. One of the things we do is sometimes some cash flow management, some debt management. I think about budgeting very much like dieting. Everyone thinks about it, and rarely do people actually stick with it. For a few reasons, not that there's anything inherently wrong with them as a person, but think about if you are worried about your budget or you're worried about your finances, you need to change. I think sometimes people try to do too much too fast. And so what I'm looking at is making one small change every week. I'm not looking for anyone to cut up their credit cards. I'm not looking for anyone to sell their car. I'm not, I don't want to do anything drastic. When I first, try to counsel clients through some cash flow, if there's some issues, let's start small. And so think about, looking through, and you're only going to find these small things if you actually look back through your spending. I always, make the analogy of the ship, and the ship, it looks fine, but as you start looking a little closer, there's like little holes, and the water is seeping in, not from a big giant hole, but like from very small little holes. So thinking about what's that one subscription that I signed up for the free trial and I forgot to cancel, and it's been billing me monthly now for the last year, and I haven't used it once. So what's that subscription you're not really using that you could cancel? Making a grocery list, going to the grocery store with no plan, and especially when you're hungry, can really make for some bad stresses on the cards there. So making a list and sticking to it. Or something as simple as, I realize I have money, but I'm not putting as much into my savings. Is there an extra $25 I could just move right now into my savings account, just to begin that process? I think, and we're going to go through a few debt repayment strategies. Again, with budgeting or with dieting, I think the motivation is the key. And so thinking about, I know these things may seem small, but these do add up. And then focusing on the quick wins. Little quick wins you can have. I know I did this. It's going to allow you to keep moving forward, and that will, ideally let you make that budget stick more, as opposed to we're eating out. No one's eating out anymore, and you're canceling your Amazon account, and you're doing this, and you start making all of these big decisions. And no, I want us to start small, and then we can build up from there. So, homework for you. Try to look back at the last 3 months, even just being aware of where some things might be a little bit off balance, where I might be spending more than I really need to. Just having that awareness alone can go so far, all right? Questions? And I'll save a couple seconds on Zoom for anyone if you have any questions for me. Yet? Okay. Mark's going to follow up with everyone to make sure that you've actually done this, all right? You told me. All right, so sometimes when we look at a budget, we assume that people have regular income. I don't know what you do, I don't know what you do, I don't know what you do, I don't know what everyone on Zoom does. So if you are a W-2 employee, you're paid bi-weekly, your company takes care of your taxes and the savings all automatically, and every 2 weeks money's going to hit your account. That's great. Depending on if you are maybe not that person, maybe you are a freelancer, maybe you have a small business, maybe you are a consultant, and your income might be a little bit irregular. One month you're bringing in $100, and then the next month, you hit that big client, and next thing you know, $20,000 comes into the bank. For people who have more of that irregular income, where it's like, I don't know if I can exactly, fit it into that 50, 30, 20 box. I can't exactly split it like that. A few things that you want to look at. First, that buffer fund. We call it the emergency fund, for individuals. I think if you're bringing in irregular income, that buffer fund is even more important. So you want to think about, ideally, what is your baseline budget? So I think for baseline, I would consider that just that 50% mark of what are my needs? What do I need to keep my business running and my personal life intact? What's that base amount? And 3 to 6 months, what do I need in an account to cover that time period of those base expenses? You're going to establish that account. That way, when you have a high income month, you get a surplus, you get that big client, money's coming into the bank, any surplus is going to go into that account. Sometimes they call it the treat yourself syndrome. You've been working so hard, you're on your own, you get that first big check, that first big client, and the first thing you do is you spend it all on yourself. So I want you to think about if you're going to have that irregularity, not that you shouldn't give yourself a reward, but thinking about what's that buffer fund? Do I have enough to cover it? That way, next month or in 2 months when my income is lower than normal, I have a cushion to be able to draw from. So think of it like the mountain and valley technique. High months, all that surplus is going to go into your buffer account. That way, once you come down in the low months, you have a buffer there to be able to hold you over, and so that you're not overly relying on credit cards and racking up credit card debt or getting yourself into some other trouble. So that's one way that we look at irregular income. Again, really focusing on that buffer fund, and then looking for ways to create predictability. Even if the income is irregular, and even if it is something small, paying yourself something regularly establishes a bit of a baseline, just to keep your sanity, I would say. So first, want to make sure that buffer fund is in place, and then finding little ways to create predictability, paying yourself regularly, even if it's something small. right, let's look at the good, the bad, and the ugly. Debt addition. So you may have heard the terms before, you know, there's good debt, there's bad debt. I'm going to go through a few examples, but I always want you to realize, you know, in the list of good debt can easily become bad debt, depending on how it's used and the interest rate. And there's some bad debt that can become good debt. So just know that, you know, the list I'm going to share with you is not hard set. If I have this type of debt, that means it's bad. I shouldn't be doing this. I got to do something. Not necessarily. We're going to talk through a little bit of the nuance. But I want you to think of good debt. What is good debt? Good debt is anything that helps you build income or assets. Bad debt is anything that helps you purchase things or buy things that are losing value. So I would think as a simple way to organize these things, again, good debt helps you build income or assets, and bad debt only allows you to buy things that continue to lose value. All right. Some examples of the good. So for example, mortgage. This is good debt. It helps you build equity and hopefully an appreciating asset in your home. It often is at a low interest rate and does have some tax advantages. So think of something like a mortgage. I know a lot of times that this is probably one of the biggest things in someone's budget is their mortgage. But thinking about, you know, you're paying, but you're also building equity in that real estate. Student loans at a reasonable interest. I've seen some really bad actors in the student loan space, especially with some of the private lenders. But for a loan with reasonable terms and at a reasonable interest rate could potentially give you a greater investment in your earning potential and career growth. Any type of business loan. So that you're looking at, okay, this loan for my business, I'm potentially creating more income, I'm building jobs, and I'm investing in the future of my business or my long-term wealth. Real estate. Real estate is great, not just as a hard asset, but for an asset that pays you a steady income. So let's just say, for example, you're looking at an investment property, and you don't want to buy this outright. I might want to get a loan for it. Any type of real estate loan. Again, want to make sure that we're cognizant of the terms and interest rate, but ideally, that real estate that you're purchasing will make the loan worth it and be able to, again, give you an asset and give you more income. And then finally, auto loan. If it's low interest with an affordable vehicle that is, within your budget, again, probably wouldn't need, get to work, get home, drive the kids around. This is sort of something you need. So thinking about, there are still good debts. And let's look a little bit at, some of the bad and some of the ugly. Probably the biggest one we've seen, credit card, but not necessarily. It depends on, a number of different factors, but just know that generally credit cards have very high interest rates, and they make it easy. So I have 2 credit cards. I try to pay the balance in full every month, keep the utilization low, but they keep putting out feelers like, do you want to extend your credit limit? Can I give you this personal loan? Can I do you this? Like, they keep trying to get you to spend more money. So you get these offers, you get the credit limit, you get the new card. It's very easy for this type of behavior to compound quickly. And you may look up one day and realize, I don't even know how I racked up this much in debt. It's just very easy. I think credit card companies, again, there's still very good benefits to having the credit card, but sometimes they do make it a little bit too easy, and it's very easy for credit card debt to compound very quickly. Payday loans, not everyone knows what these are. I know in some states they're actually been deemed illegal, but they're very short term. They're meant to be paid on your payday, and they're for small amounts, but the interest rates on them are very exorbitant. Something very relevant right now, unfortunately more and more stores are implementing it, is the buy now, pay later trap. It encourages overspending. I'm buying this new Apple Mac computer for $2,000. I don't have $2,000. Apple says I can just pay this in $100 installments over so many you hear the terms, but you just heard to yourself, I can buy this computer for $100. Not necessarily. So again, some of those, buy now, pay later overuse and encourages some overspending. And over time, you have this store does it, that store does it. I went on that site, that let me, buy now, pay later. A lot of small debts, even if they're small. I spent $200 here, $200 there, $500 there. The buy now, pay later, just realize those are still debts, and they're little small ones that are slowly adding up. Personal loans, again, depends on what you use them for. Oftentimes, if you use them for consumption or fixing other stresses in your budget, again, that's not wealth building. And then finally, if you're into the luxury lifestyle and your income isn't really keeping up with it, and you're using borrowing to be able to keep up, borrowing for depreciating assets, so luxury cars are probably one of the biggest traps, and any type of new tech, because again, these things are look nice, they're great for the gram, but in reality they're a depreciating asset. Questions? I'll pause here for my people on Zoom if you have any questions. All right. Oh, no questions. All right, so let's look at a few things we can do for debt management. Again, I'm going to go through probably the top two that are the most common. You may have heard about them before. But I think first what we want to look at is for debt management, if you feel you're in a little bit of trouble, you're anxious about it, what you really got to do is what I call look at the monster. Understand all your debts, just rip out the statements, rip out the bills, look at the monster, because you can't keep avoiding it. The more you avoid it, the more it's going to keep building, keep causing you stress, keep causing you anxiety. And really what you want to look at is the balance, not just the balance though. You also want to look at, for each of these debts, what is the interest rate. And we're going to go through a few techniques in terms of debt management, in terms of if I have debt, how do I go about paying it off? What do I do first? We're going to go through that, but I want you to also think about, for all of these, I always say automate, automate, automate. The more that you can automate in your budget, I would say not just for the savings, but definitely for debt management, not making sure that that debt payment, at least the minimum, is coming out of your bank account automatically. It's not a choice. When it's due, the money hits automatically. That way, you're not thinking, and you're not forgetting. So for all of these, and even if it's a small amount, even if it's just the minimum, it's funny. I usually try to pay all of my stuff in full, but there's been times that I've completely forgotten, and next thing you know, I'm charged a late fee for a company that I never missed a payment before. So even if it's even if you're on top of your stuff, even if you got your Excel spreadsheets, you're really on top of it, you're feeling good. The more you automate, it's just, again, trying to limit that human error of just simply, listen, I totally forgot about this and I forgot to pay it this month. Now I'm getting charged an extra late fee, which I could have avoided. So we're going to run through the top two methods for debt management. In terms of, I have it, I've looked at my monster, and I know what I have. Now I need to start, how do I actually start tackling this? The first is called the debt snowball. So when you're looking at your debt, you're going to list, this is going to be a balance-focused approach. So you're going to list your debts from the smallest balance to the largest. For my $100 buy now, pay later little thing that I did at Apple, all the way up to my car loan or my student loans. So you're thinking about listing from balance. And this is more where I come into, this is a motivation, and this is about getting the small wins. The idea is you pay off your smallest debts first. That way, when you pay off your debt and you see, oh my gosh, that's cleared, it gives you motivation. it makes you happy, and it keeps you energized to continue. And so that's where you get the snowball method, where you start small, knock out the small, knock out the small, knock out the small. You're motivated, you're feeling good, and you're just going to keep that going until you move to the next largest debt. So you're starting from small, and then you're slowly tackling up to the large. This is, again, this is not the interest rate. You're not looking at interest rate, you're looking at just the balance. And this is more of a motivation, again, getting those small wins to propel you forward. The next method is what's called the debt avalanche. I don't know who named these. They must have really liked snow. We have snowball and avalanche. I don't know who named these, but now we're looking at the avalanche. So this is now looking at ordering the debts in terms of what's my interest rate. So you would order them from the debt with the highest interest rate to the lowest. And you're still going through a similar method that's very procedural, where you are tackling that highest interest rate debt first. And then once that's paid off, you move to the next largest interest rate debt, and you move on from there. So you have one method where you're looking at you're looking at pure balance. And again, you're just trying to knock off those small debts first to give you that momentum to keep going. But over the long term, again, interest rates and the amount you pay in interest, long term, doing the avalanche method, again, because you're actually tackling now the highest interest rate debt first. Many people say over the long term, avalanche, is usually the better option. But sometimes people's highest interest rate debt is that credit card debt, and that's like a monster to look at. So sometimes for the avalanche method, that's a little bit harder for people to stick with, as opposed to the snowball, where you're getting the little ones, feeling good, and you just have that motivation to continue. So those are the two main methods. Again, there's others. There's debt counselors. There's other resources available. But I would say just the top two that you're probably going to hear or research about if you wanted to do some more research after this class would be the debt snowball method or the debt avalanche.
Question. So I guess you typically would you exclude like a home mortgage from that? Because otherwise,
Yeah.
putting that high would never let you pay other stuff.
Right. And it does, again, so that's where it's going to depend. So in like the interest rate, let's just say like I sometimes get clients they've been conditioned, it's like I want to pay off my mortgage early. It's so large, it's saying, but then you look at the interest rate and it's like 2%. it's so again, thinking about, and that's where you're looking at the interest rate and how much you're paying in interest. So it may not always be, again, I think the mortgage is still on people's minds. But it's usually, I would think for both the methods, it's usually not the first that's going to be on the top of the list. Ideally, it would have a lower interest rate, so it wouldn't be on the top of the avalanche, and it's going to be a higher balance, so it wouldn't be at the top of the snowball. And I will stop there as well for anyone on Zoom. Any questions? I have a question. For both of you, and I know some people even on Zoom said debt was your highest concern. Have you heard of these methods? Have you tried them?
I guess so. Like in terms of people have always referred to like debt as snowballing.
Mhm.
I've never heard of the avalanche one.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
So you don't want to say debt is snowballing, because that makes it seem like it's like your own debt that's snowballing. You're using that method against the debt.
Yeah.
You're snowballing against it. So this is not saying that you should let your debt snowball. That is not what it's saying. All right, excellent. All right. What I want to do is, for my people in the room, if you still have space at the top of your page, that's great. If not, you can flip it over. For my people at home, again, if you want to grab a piece of paper, what I want to do is I want to finish off with one more exercise, and I'm going to give you a couple minutes. I really want you to look at 3 personal goals that you have, and I just want you to list them. In addition to your personal goals, I want you to look at when do you want to achieve that goal. So sometimes we say, oh, I have this goal, but I'll get to that sometime. I'll travel sometime. And the more you say sometime, the less likely, it'll likely occur. So I want you to be specific. I have a goal. When do I want to achieve that goal? Do I want to achieve that goal in 6 months, in a year, in 10 years? Just be specific as to when you want to achieve that goal. And then this is important. I want you to think about that goal, and I want you to give 2 to 3 words of how you would feel if that goal was achieved. So for example, I want to be credit card, I want to be debt free. What would that make you feel? 2 to 3 words. You don't need to write a paragraph, but just thinking about, I have a goal, I put myself in that mindset where I achieved it, how would that make me feel? And then finally, I want you to attach a dollar sign to it. So for that goal that you have, how much money would it take to achieve it? So for example, if you're looking at personal goals, it could be something as simple as, I don't really have a good emergency fund. All I want to do is I just want to save $10,000. Great. Sometimes the goal is bigger. Sometimes I want to put my child through college. Much bigger expense, but still a goal. Or something like I want to travel to Italy. So I want you to, again, don't always think about, scarcity of I got to pay off debt, I want this, but think about your goals. Think about, 3 goals you really want. Attach a dollar sign to it, be specific, and then let me know how you would feel if that goal is achieved. Just take a few minutes just to think about those goals, and then we'll start tackling. More time? Yeah. Do we have 3? I'm going to give 1 more minute. All right, so hopefully by now we have 3 goals. We're specific as to when we want to achieve them. We know what it would feel like when we finally do. And we now know, no matter how big or small, we've attached the money to it, we know what we have to achieve. For the next couple minutes, I want to look at some of those vehicles. And this is why I asked for the time, because depending on the time it's going to take you to achieve that goal, there could potentially be some different vehicles we could use. So I want to start with first, easiest that we can understand. This is going to be for short-term goals, goals that I could achieve in 1 to 3 years or even sooner. So for those types of goals, we're looking at cash, we're looking at CDs, we're looking at bonds or money markets. So why? I have a goal, let's just say, for example, in 6 months I want to put a down payment on a house. If I have my money and I go put that in the stock market or I put it in another vehicle where there's some fluctuation, there's some risk, when it comes to actually fork up the money to my house, my $10,000 may now only be $8,000. So I want to think about for short-term goals, goals that I know are coming up, I want to keep these in relatively safe investments, more conservative, and investments that I know are not going to go down in principal. If I know I have a goal in the next year or 2 years, I know the amount I need, I'm going to save it, but I'm going to save it in a vehicle where I know that principal is not going to be jumping around. So a few things that we can do. Money in a checking account that is earning 0.0001% interest might not be the best place to put it. So even with cash or a conservative investment, you can still get the most bang for your buck. One thing we could look at is a high yield savings account or a CD. A few similarities is ideally, in the name high yield, I would say right now with rates where they are, I think a high yield savings account, you can still probably get a good 3.5%, 3.75% interest rate on a high yield savings account. For a CD as well, I think, looking at the high 2%, 3% range for CDs, I think is still, good for this environment. One thing that you want to be mindful of is a high yield savings account has no lockups. So you could take the money out anytime, you could move the money in, move the money out. There's no limitations to that. Whereas a CD, certificate of deposit, there is typically a maturity window that you purchase beforehand. So it may be, it might say something like 6-month CD, it might say 1-year CD, it might say 2-year CD, where the money's liquid, it's not going to go down, but if you tried to pull it out prior to that maturity, you may get hit with a penalty fee. So again, looking at the time frame that I have my goal in, if I have something coming up, I'm going on a trip in 6 months and I have the money set aside for it, I'm not going to go buy a 1-year CD so that when I try to pull the money out, I get penalized. So thinking about, at least for a bank or credit union, again, a lot of these you can find maybe at your bank, credit union. There are some high yield savings account that you can get completely online. So if you're not into let me walk into my local branch, there's a lot. I know Marcus by Goldman Sachs is still a good one. Discover has an online savings, so just want to give you some options there. A few other things we can do if you're looking at more brokerage firms. One is a money market fund or a bond fund. Typically, money markets, you're looking at very short-term bonds, sometimes even T-bills. So again, right now money market funds yielding around, good ones should still be around, 3%, sometimes more. But a money market is fully liquid. That meaning, money's not, locked up, and you're getting a good interest rate. But most of the time, money market funds or bond funds would be purchased. Sometimes banks have them. They might call them a money market account. But if you're looking at a money market fund, ideally you would go to a brokerage firm. So you're looking at Vanguard, Charles Schwab, Fidelity, one of those types of brokerage firms. And we're going to get more into what exactly these investments do, I would say, next week. But initially, if we're looking at a short-term goal, I know it's coming up. I don't want to be risking my money, and I know if I want to save for a goal, where should I be putting the money? Short-term, again, we have high-yield savings accounts, potentially a CD, or you could look at some money market funds or bond funds at a brokerage firm. Any questions on that? Okay. So let's move to the next vehicle that we have available to us. These would be brokerage accounts. So when we're looking at a brokerage account, we could potentially now be looking at investments in stocks, in ETFs, which stands for exchange traded funds, or mutual funds. Stock market is risky. There's volatility. So depending on what you invest in, and there's a many different ETFs, many different stocks. But anytime you buy a stock or an ETF or a mutual fund, you have market risk. So we've seen some volatility this year. So the reason that we have a brokerage account, potentially these would be suitable for more of those medium to long-term goals. That way, you're saving. But let's just say if we're saving, in a down market or things are a little shaky, things are volatile, I know I'm going to have time to be able to ride out a little bit of that storm. Another thing, so sitting in cash is one thing. If you want a higher return on the funds over time, again, it's going to depend what exactly you invest in. But the reason stocks, ETFs, mutual funds are attractive is because they give higher return potential than just sitting in cash or sitting with your money under your mattress. But understand, with that potential for a higher return, that comes with higher risk. And sometimes that risk is loss of principal. And one thing we have to look at is, I own a stock, and in 2 years that stock has now appreciated, it's gone up, and I'm ready to go ahead and sell it and take my cash and go to Italy or go to Greece or do whatever my goal is. I may owe taxes on that. So realizing that now we're looking at brokerage accounts or assets, stocks, ETFs, mutual funds. Again, you're looking at not just market volatility. Again, yes, there is still higher return potential, but hopefully, if you were a good investor or you had a good advisor that gave you some good guidance, at the end of that time period, you have gains on those assets. But when you sell those, you may owe what are called capital gains taxes. Any questions on brokerage accounts? And these accounts, anyone can open them up. Again, major firms, you've heard, Vanguard, Charles Schwab, Fidelity. You could open them up individually in your name. If you are, in a happy marriage and you want to have both you and your spouse on the account, you could open up what are called joint accounts. So just know there's a number of different ways you could register the account if you want to go to a brokerage firm. All right, next vehicle are accounts specifically for retirement. So I would say, looking at employer-sponsored plans, 401k, 403b. These are plans typically only offered through an employer, and these are specifically for retirement. Now, let's just say, you have a 401k, or maybe even your company doesn't offer a 401k. Can you still get access to a retirement plan? Yes. We have things called IRAs. These are called individual retirement accounts. Two of the top ones, again, there's multiple types of IRAs that we can get into, but I would say the top two that you'll probably hear are what are called traditional IRAs and Roth IRAs. And potentially, depending on, again, your circumstances, you may have both an employer plan, a 401k, and an IRA. You may just have one or the other. But the thing to note about any type of retirement account is unlike the accounts that we looked at previously, whether we're just at a money market or at a bank or a brokerage firm. Retirement accounts, IRAs, 401ks, 403bs have what are called contribution limits. So every year the IRS comes out with a limit that you can contribute to these accounts. And potentially, for example, in the circumstance of a Roth IRA, if you make over a certain income, you may be ineligible to contribute. So realize that retirement accounts, we have them as a vehicle, but just know that they are subject to what are called contribution limits. And finally, so we have the account, we have grown it, and at that point we're looking to start taking what are called distributions. I'm looking to take my money out. I said my goal was I want to retire. I've built up my 401k and my IRA, and I'm ready to, tell my boss to, kick rocks, and now I'm ready to go. I start taking distributions. Depending on the type of account that it's in, that may be a taxable event for you. It may be considered income. So just know that certain distributions may be taxable. You're going to tell your IRA, hi, I'd like $10,000, and they withhold 20%, and you only get 8, and you're like, what happened to the rest of my money? Well, sometimes those distributions are taxable, so the IRS is going to take their share. The other thing to be mindful of, again, these accounts are specifically for retirement. Depending on the circumstances, if you try to take distributions early, I would say typically early means before the age 59 and a half. Not only will you be potentially taxed on the distribution, but the IRS is going to slap an additional early withdrawal penalty on those distributions. So typically funds in 401ks and traditional IRAs, are going to be liquid. However, depending on your age and the type of account it's in, distribution may be taxable, and if you are, again, younger than age 59 and a half, the IRS may also slap an early withdrawal penalty on that. Questions on retirement accounts?
So I have 403B. Is there a difference between that and 401k besides the fact that I work for a nonprofit?
Not really. The structure is the same. 401ks are for private companies, and 403bs are for companies like nonprofits. But essentially, it's the
So I
same.
would have no problem like rolling over if I change jobs and stuff.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Another question.
Yeah. Please.
Since I'm only 28, is it better to put a higher percentage in my 403B or in a Roth or IRA?
So it's going to depend. I think income plays into a lot of it, and so there's going to be a difference in how the plan is set up. Sometimes you contribute pre-tax money, meaning the money that goes in has not been taxed yet, so it's taken off of your taxable income, which is the reason why later down the road, when you start to take those distributions, that's when the government comes and takes their share. So it depends if you are contributing on a pre-tax basis. Typically, people who are in higher income brackets benefit more because they're getting that pre-tax deduction versus a Roth where you're contributing after tax. The money has already been taxed. I have my own personal thoughts on a Roth. I think Roth IRAs or anything Roth is an extremely powerful vehicle. The reason being is, and I'm just going to take, for example, a Roth IRA. I contribute after-tax money, meaning the money's already been taxed. It's mine. It's already been taxed. I'm good. As long as you make it to age 59 and a half, and the Roth has been established for at least 5 years. It could have been massive growth, 10x, 500x, whatever. All distributions that come from the Roth are going to come back to you tax-free. So I typically, again, it's going to depend on a person's income, but I think for someone that's not in the highest income bracket, more middle of the road, I still think the Roth IRA is still very, very powerful.
There is a question from Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a best time or circumstance to convert a traditional IRA into a Roth?
There is. So what they're asking about is what's called a Roth conversion. So For example, I have money in a 401k, a 403b that's pre-tax, or a traditional IRA that's pre-tax. I want to get that money into a Roth IRA. You can do what's called a Roth conversion, which essentially means you're going to pay the taxes on the fund that you convert, but after that point, they get all the benefits of the Roth. Two general scenarios where I've seen, again, always have to say, working with the client, it's going to come down to the specific circumstances, but age, if you are younger, meaning if you convert your funds to Roth, that money has more time to reap the Roth benefit down the road. That would be one time where we typically say it's probably best to Roth convert. The second, which is if you are in your later career or you're just older, let's just say you've retired and now you're living off your investments and you don't actually have a high W-2 income anymore. So you may be living, but the actual income level, you may have assets, but the actual taxable income level you have is very low. We call that a little bit of a sweet spot in the early retirement, where if people have large 401k or IRA balances, if, for example, in that year, you're not earning a high income, if you're in a lower tax bracket that year, that may be the time to start Roth converting. Before RMDs start, before Social Security starts, all these things that start filling up that bracket and start, getting your income high. If you have a sweet spot before that starts, where you might want to start Roth converting because you're not earning a lot of taxable income, and you could start filling up those low brackets, and it's taxed at a lower rate. That's the second point, second time where we might want to really look at that. Great question. All right, and we're almost at time, so I want to run through one more real quick, and then I want to have you finish off your blueprint for now. Finally, if anyone has education goals, or you're looking at, I want to fund, my child's education, you're a grandparent and you want to put some money, for your grandchild's education, there are what are called 529 college savings plans. Essentially, these work sort of like an IRA, where you put the money in, and that money is going to be invested in funds, potentially an ETF, mutual funds, portfolio like that. That portfolio has years to grow up until they may need the money. And as long as the beneficiary uses the money for a qualified education expense, and most people often think tuition, yes, tuition, but recently the IRS has expanded, what is considered a qualified education expense. Could be course credits, could be books. So again, there's a whole list as to what considers a qualified education expense. If the money is used for that and your grandchild doesn't take their 529 plan and buy a BMW, which is not a qualified education expense, if it is for that expense, the qualified education, that withdrawal could potentially be tax-free. So that's the major benefit of the 529 education savings account. So what I want us to do to end is I want you to look back on your goals, and looking back at when they might need to be done, and looking back at the amount of money that you're going to be needing to achieve that goal. And next to it, I just want you to note, based on what we talked about, what we saw, what is the most suitable investment vehicle that you might want to consider to start saving for that goal. And then next week,
Actually,
all
2
of you
weeks.
will be back.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. 2 weeks, we're going to come back and we're going to dive deeper into each of those accounts and the strategies for each to help you reach your goals. And I want you to feel all those things that you said you were going to feel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Liam. All right, see you folks in 2 weeks.